America's best days are yet to come. That's because conservatives like you know and live the values our great country was built on. The Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard in the D.C. swamp each day, shining the light on a bright future. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
President Trump is bringing in 500 more National Guard troops because we will not be taken down by this. We will not be threatened. We will not be intimidated as a country.
Attorney General Pam Bondi talking about what's going on in D.C. after the needless murdering of two National Guardsmen. Well, one that has died, another that's in critical condition. We pray that he does actually pull through these severe injuries. And as we're taking a look at the price that we continue to pay for President Biden having been a thing, it's a reminder about all of the important things that go along with policy. You take a look at so much of what we're dealing with right now, so much of what has to be cleaned up. A lot of it traces back to one particular date. And then it happened to be August 26th of 2021. And I'll tie all that in together and talk about where we go from here. Got a lot that we're going to cover during the course of the show, including some really good news. President Trump has been taking a lot of action this Black Friday after Thanksgiving. Bring you the latest on what he has done with any of Team Autopin's executive orders, also what the implications are going forward, which are significant. I'm going to talk about how Trump care can change everything. It's what I've been waiting for from a healthcare perspective pretty much my entire career, and I'm very excited to tell you where we are in that process, as I have an update from the author of it in the United States Senate, from Senator Rick Scott. It is Brian Mudd here with you once again. Do hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family, your friends. I know that I certainly did. But we know, unfortunately, there are a lot of folks who didn't because of what happened in Washington, D.C., but also because of those who continue to be victims of crimes committed by illegal aliens all throughout society. It is remarkable how Joe Biden he's like the salmonella-ridden turkey that keeps on giving. You know, it'd be like you had undercooked poultry that was served on Thanksgiving. You had family members that had to go to the ER yesterday. And then somebody broke out the turkey again and said, you know what we need to be doing right now is running with it. That is the equivalent of Joe Biden's policy. Here he is, having been out of office, thank God, for almost 11 months. And what have we seen? Well, going back to August 26th of 2021, he managed to kill 13 members of our military during that horrific and failed withdrawal from Afghanistan. The one where it showed, you know what? Joe Biden really has no credibility on foreign policy. It was the door that opened to all of the escalation and conflict that we ended up seeing, that President Trump has been working to fix. Now, on Tuesday, when I was guesting for Mark, we were talking about President Trump being a historic unifier, how he is right now working on the Ukraine-Russia peace deal, which, by the way, we have an update since Tuesday on that. Putin himself has come out and said, yeah, we are serious about working on peace at this point. So that is moving forward. After the 8 remarkable peace accords that President Trump has already brokered, basically one per month throughout his presidency. Why did we have all of that taking place? Well, it's because Joe Biden was president of the United States, because he was so weak. And the day that everything was on full display, where all the bad actors of the world are like, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do what we're going to do because the United States, no longer the United States. It was that fateful August day during the failed withdrawal from Afghanistan, where we dropped our pants. We let the Taliban take over. We let the Chinese in to get a hold of our equipment, to get a hold of all of the various different minerals, rare earths that were present in Afghanistan, all the bloodshed, all the lives that were put on the line and lost, American servicemen and women, for what? Because Joe Biden, just absolutely feckless and weak. And it all comes back. I was thinking about this when we had the really unfortunate news of the terrorist attack in D.C. on Wednesday. And that is that Joe Biden has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy, national security issue of the past 4 decades. They happen to be the words of Obama's Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, going all the way back to what Gates had to say about Biden when he was vice president. And that streak is unbroken. You know, I don't even know if old Joe knows where he is right now, let alone how his Thanksgiving was, or if he remembers what happened yesterday. But there's no doubt that every single day his presence continues to be felt because of his horrible policies that we're trying to correct and get our arms around. It is a fact that Sarah Beckstrom is dead today because Joe Biden was president of the United States. It is an absolute fact that if Joe Biden had not been president, we wouldn't have had the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the failed way went down. We wouldn't have had the 13 service members that died in that terrorist attack. We wouldn't have had a so-called vetted Islamic terrorist that would have been brought back into the United States, that then would have been in position to murder Sarah Beckstrom on Wednesday, to put Andrew Wolf in critical status, clinging to his life right now. So even this far removed, Joe Biden continues to be that salmonella-ridden turkey that just keeps on giving. So back about that August 26, 2021 day, when that failed withdrawal took place, I was thinking about all this in the aftermath, and Robert Gates ended up saying that Joe Biden has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy, national security issue of the past 4 decades. He ended up saying that after Biden was the only member of the Obama cabinet who was like, no, we shouldn't go take out Osama bin Laden. You know, when SEAL Team 6 went in and got him, Biden was the one who's like, no, we shouldn't do that. And so when you got a guy who makes decisions like that, when he was of theoretically sound mind back then, you knew the decisions weren't ever going to be better when he was president. They certainly weren't. And I was thinking about all the implications over those 4 years. I was thinking about the implications that we continue to deal with. The importing of Islamic terror into this country, around the world. As you have Islamic terrorist organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood who are over halfway into their 100-year plan to take over the West, having already set up shop and successfully infiltrated so many societies in Europe, having done it here in our country. And we had another recent chanting of death to America in Dearborn, Michigan. That's fun. Always good when in the city streets of the United States of America, we have Islamists that are out there chanting death to America. That's awesome. Just, of course, in their native tongue, which would not be the native tongue of most folks in this country, certainly. And you think about all the things that came back into vogue. You know, I was thinking about the credibility of Trump. Remember that we had ISIS with its caliphate when Trump came into office. He ran in 2016 on saying, you know what? We're going to bomb the blank out of ISIS. When I become president, we're going to bomb the blank out of ISIS. And he became president. He bombed the blank out of ISIS. The caliphate was over. Pretty much everybody was dead as a doornail that was associated with it. And that was the end of the story until when Biden came back. And then once you had the failed withdrawal from Afghanistan, what happened? we heard about all these entities you probably hadn't heard about in 15, 20 years. How long had it been since we had heard about the Taliban? But then we heard about the Taliban because they controlled Afghanistan. And then what ended up happening? ISIS ended up gaining a foothold again and started becoming a bigger problem around the world, including at times here in this country, and still is. Al-Qaeda. That was a name that you didn't hear about since bin Laden was popped by SEAL Team 6, but they suddenly came back in. And so all the Islamic terrorists ended up rearing their ugly heads and having a greater impact around the world after the failed withdrawal from Afghanistan. You then ended up having what? Russia move on Ukraine. And Biden, with all of his tough talk, we've got all these sanctions, and there's no way that you're going to have Russia that is going to move with all this economic might that we have. And Putin's like, please. And did what he was going to do, which wouldn't have happened if Trump had been president. What else happened? Well, you had China that began provocating over Taiwan. You then had them become more aggressive with Hong Kong, with other countries in the region, building up their military might in the South China Sea. Bow Islands, they ended up building and occupying that pose an increased threat. Then you ended up having, among other conflicts, what? Hamas and Israel, backed by Iran. All of those things. Why? Because of Joe Biden's weakness. And it happened so quickly, too, because they all knew that they had to go quickly. And can you imagine where we would be if Kamala Harris was president of the United States? Oh, my gosh. Trump is the only thing that saved us from probably World War III at this point. But one of the things that I frequently would say back in those days is that every day that Joe Biden was president of the United States, the country was less safe and the world was less safe. And every day that Donald Trump had been, at that point, president of the United States, the world had been a safer place. Well, here we are again. The same is true, only we continue to have to dig out of the ditch that the world was put in, that we as a country were put in, with all of these illegal immigrants, the so-called vetted ones, too, like this Islamic terrorist who worked with intelligence agencies. Yeah, I mean, real good intelligence. We imported a terrorist who apparently was in Washington State, drove into Washington, D.C., and then murdered service members. So we had real good intelligence, real good vetting. I'm sure, but I'm sure it's just because he went crazy. Maybe it's because he went to Washington State. Maybe we can blame it on the left coast for corrupting the mind of said Islamic terrorists. Could be. But anyway, back in those days, the Biden administration, and thinking about the way I felt after the fall of Afghanistan, my expectations for the Biden administration were low, and I generally was the most concerned for our country that I had been in my lifetime when he became president. And as of that day, which was very early in his presidency, I was like, holy crap, this is actually much worse than I even thought it was going to be. I mean, that probably happened to you, too. There came a point where you're like, I knew Biden was going to be bad, and then, oh, wait, this is much worse, right? Completely open borders. Free puppies, free candy, free Obama phones, free all these things that, of course, are anything but free for all the illegal immigrants. No real vetting. Collapsing of Afghanistan, letting of terrorists in. I mean, you name it, we did it. And all at your expense. Now, I remember saying the day after the fall of Afghanistan, you had Biden that said this. He said, we will hunt down everyone who perpetrated the attack, the terror attack on the 13 service members who died, the death toll that's now up to 14 related to that Afghanistan withdrawal because of the terrorists that he brought back. And the first thing is, that we never got one of those people. We never did any tracking down. We never did any hunting down. Never took place. But you know what else ended up happening? I'll tell you next. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
The suspect lived in Washington state, not too far from the Canadian border. Investigators are probing his past. The 29-year-old is originally from Afghanistan. Prosecutors, though, are remaining tight-lipped about what may have motivated this man to allegedly drive cross-country and carry out what's now a deadly ambush.
Fox's Mark Meredith. And, the more I think about it, on the one hand, guy was an Islamic terrorist, guy from Afghanistan, vetted. He worked with our intelligence agencies, just... this upstanding citizen of the world, which, by the way, we continue to hear from some real interesting characters occasionally on the right, too. We can't judge all these people that were like aboard that plane, that were like jumping on to try to get in that plane as it fled Afghanistan. We can't judge all people by this Islamic terrorist. No, I'm sure everybody else there is just as warm and fluffy as the terrorist is. But the one thing that is compelling about it, okay, so you come into this country from anywhere around the world. Forget it's from Afghanistan and that you're an Islamic terrorist for a moment. You come from somewhere else around the world, and you're dropped in Washington state near the Canadian border. I could do it. I could see that. I could see this happening. I could see the potential compromising of one's mind with that set of circumstances. Could be challenging to somebody who has a brain that's screwed on straight. Just no offense to folks in parts of Washington that are dealing with the folks who have brains that are not fully functioning, not operating particularly well. But anyway, so how many other people do you think? How many other people may have even been on that plane that left Afghanistan? What are we in for here? Is there more? Biden said, when we failed in that Afghanistan withdrawal, we will hunt down everyone who perpetrated the attack. Nobody was ever held to account. No terrorists were ever taken down over there for that terrorist attack. All we ended up doing under Biden was blowing up a bus of what I recall to be relief workers. Whoops. More good intelligence and vetting by the Biden administration. But the other thing that ended up taking place, it wasn't just the bad actors, the dictators around the world who saw what happened. They're like, hey, you know what? It's open season on all of the entities we want to take on. That's what it did for asylum seekers in this country, too. That's when the floodgates to crime opened in this country from all around the world. I'm going to pick up there next. Then bring you some better news about all this nonsense with Trump. That's coming up, too. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.
We're coming upon the 250th birthday of the United States, and it has me thinking, what will America look like 250 years from now? My friends at the Heritage Foundation want to know what you think. What policies should America prioritize? What principles should carry us into the decades ahead? As America enters a new golden age, Heritage recognizes that this is the time to take stock and to be intentional about how we shape the future of America. And they can't do it without your input. So please go to heritage.org/LEVIN and let them know what you think is important. Without patriots like you stepping up and speaking up for what you believe in, America as we know it can't survive for another 250 years. Please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Take the survey on America's future future. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, but it is critical for making sure that the America we pass on to future generations is an America we're proud of. Go to heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
You can call us now at 877-381-3811. And the Liberal contact number is 877-381-3811.
So here we are. For a lot of folks, what is Black Friday and a time you're looking for deals and a time when you're enjoying what you have with your family. And I do sincerely hope it's been that way for you. But for the family of Sarah Beckstrom, not so much. She's the 14th casualty of Joe Biden's failed withdrawal from Afghanistan in August of 2001. Biden just continues to kill people, even this far removed from office. But that's not the only way he continues to do it. I'll tell you about that here in a moment. I do appreciate you taking the time this Thanksgiving weekend with us. Always important to make it worth your while. Talk about there being two sides to stories, one side of facts. So I got a lot of those for you, including a lot of good material coming up on healthcare in particular and how we really could be on the precipice of something historic, the legitimate fix for it as well. President Trump's already working on fixing the illegal alien issue, as you're well aware. There's a lot more on that as well we'll work through. A couple of different things that would love for you to do. First, got to remember to hit up your DVR, Life, Liberty, Levin. Saturday and Sunday, you will have the great one that'll be with you this weekend. Make sure you always tune in, but heck, have your DVR set, because if you ever miss it, then you want to make sure you can go back and watch it later. And you never know, you might want to watch it again anyway. The other thing I'd love for you to do, check out the Brian Mudd Show podcast. I'm broadcasting from my home station, WJNO in West Palm Beach, just a few miles away from Mar-a-Lago and the President of the United States. But would love for you to check out the Brian Mudd Show podcast wherever you get your podcast. Can also catch me socially at Brian Mudd Radio. Let's talk a little bit about the other thing that the failed withdrawal from Afghanistan that Trump has been working to correct with all the peace deals that he has already worked out and that he's working out right now with Russia and Ukraine. Also, the policies combating illegal immigration. What it ended up doing, you might recall there being the narrative that used to exist, that would be perpetuated. And every now and then, someone will still lie through their teeth and articulate it. Well, that illegal aliens are really more law-abiding than you. They are less likely to even commit a crime than you would be, because they're warm and fluffy. They want to pick your strawberries. They want to pick your oranges. And so therefore, they're more law-abiding than you, which always was a false premise. I talked about there being a premise, and if the premise of anything is false, anything built in that false premise will be too. Well, a couple things about that. So not very likely that if the first act by somebody in this country is to break the law, that then they're going to start abiding by more. But what we saw was a proliferation of this under the Biden administration. We slowly but surely saw more bad actors from around the world come into the country following August of 2021. By the time that the Biden administration was done, my analysis that I wrapped up earlier this year, and in fact, I shared this on the show earlier this year, showed that the average non-citizen in the United States had become 914% more likely to commit a crime than you. And when I say you, I mean, the average one of you. I mean, if you're that guy, maybe not. But I don't know. I don't know how many shifty folks are necessarily listening. But 914% more likely non-citizens to commit a crime by the time that Biden was done. And when you take a look at what happened, it was staggering. If you wanted to get rid of a quarter of all crime in this country, a quarter entering the Trump administration this year, all you needed to do, get rid of the illegal immigration, get rid of illegal aliens. Last year, 24% of all drug trafficking in the United States. The result of illegal immigrants. 24% of all drug trafficking. 25% of all property crimes. Illegal aliens. 28% of all fraud. You want to get rid of that? Get rid of illegal aliens. That is what Joe Biden brought into the United States. When you take a look at the increase in crime by non-citizens under the Biden administration, sexual offenses, 182%. How many more drug possession trafficking charges took place with illegal aliens by the time the Biden administration was done than when Trump left? Over 500% more. How many more assaults, batteries, domestic violence situations that we have with illegal aliens at the end of the Biden administration compared to Trump? Greater than 600%. By the way, we also had more than a 600% increase in non-citizens committing burglaries, robberies, theft, fraud. We had a greater than 600% increase in illegal weapons possession. We're always concerned about guns, right? Of course, if you're a legal gun owner, then we are concerned. But if you're an illegal alien, shoot, yeah. Just go ahead and traffic whatever you want to. DUIs, which is fun on many levels because obviously if you're an illegal alien, well, you shouldn't be in this country. Then you certainly shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car. And then you certainly shouldn't be drunk while you're behind the wheel of that car. DUIs by illegal aliens up 700% by the time that Biden was done. When you take a look at homicide and manslaughter, we care about those, right? As we're taking a look at the warm and fluffy Afghan terrorist, he was vetted, who just ended up murdering Sarah Beckstrom and who ended up putting Andrew Wolf in critical status, fighting for his life right now. Homicide and manslaughter by non-citizens rose 967% under the Biden administration. But remember, these people less likely to commit crimes than you. They're warm and fluffy. They're just magic A-word people. Just people who are looking for an opportunity. When in reality, you had all of these people that ended up getting to our often southern border early on and going, essay. This where I say asylum. And the Border Patrol agent take a look at them and go, yeah, looks like you said the magic A word. So here are some brochures. We have a 5-star in Manhattan, if you would like that. We can go ahead and here's an NGO. They'll get you all set up with transportation. We'll make sure you get it set up with all your government goodies once you get there. We want only the best for you, the non-citizen asylum seeker. And all of the bogus activity that went on with that asylum seeking. What we ended up seeing is that 97% of those who actually were processed ended up being not legitimate asylum seekers for any number of reasons, starting with the fact that the very definition of asylum is you are fleeing a government that is hostile to you. And it's kind of hard for anybody other than a Mexican, for example, to come through Mexico and declare asylum. So there literally is not a legitimate asylum seeker other than a Mexican that'd be coming from Mexico by definition. And yet that was most of it. Of course, until the Biden administration realized, hey, you know what? It was bad optics for all these caravans at the southern border. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to go ahead and create this CBP1 home app. And this way, we'll just go ahead and use this app and you can just fly yourself straight into the United States. That way, nobody has to see these pesky illegal aliens that are at the southern border. No, we'll just fly you straight into airports. And you won't even have to have the kind of security that the average American trying to fly would end up having. Why would we do that after all? So that is all part of the frustrating part that goes into that dynamic. Then you take a look at something else that ended up coming into play, and that happened to be the benefits that were associated with all of this. The average net lifetime financial impact of each illegal immigrant from the time they enter this country until the time they exit, be it by deportation or death, has risen to $68,000. $68,000. That is a figure that is net of the taxes that are paid by illegals, because that's always been one of the other arguments that's been applied. You know, just to go ahead and have ICE detain somebody and set them up for deportation, that's $17,000 in expense now, independent of any other expense that's associated with illegal immigrants. But it's far from the only expense. And the reason why is something else that the Biden administration did, that President Trump has, as of today, stopped, because he ended Biden-era executive orders pertaining to asylum seekers and government benefits. He allowed all of the asylum seekers access to full government program assistance. So, for example, while waiting for asylum cases to be heard, which could go on for like 7 years because of how ridiculously overlogged the system was with the record amount of illegal immigration into this country, you had all of these programs opened up for the asylum seekers. Food stamps, child nutrition programs, temporary assistance for needy families, supplemental security income, so SSI, child care and development block grants, the earned income tax credit. Why not, dude? Earned income tax credit for illegal alien kids. That's great. Child tax credit, the Obamacare premium tax credit, the Obamacare cost-sharing subsidies, Medicare, Medicaid, Children's Health Insurance Program, Pell Grants for illegal aliens opened up, student loans, Head Start money, public housing, which is a huge part of the housing inflation that took place because all of those illegal aliens had to work had to live somewhere, and they ended up taking all the affordable housing so that Americans that needed that affordable housing didn't have access to it. And yes, they also, while available, were opened up for coronavirus fiscal recovery funds, because certainly your local illegal aliens would need access to coronavirus fiscal recovery funds. You can't make these stuff up. So yeah, just choice. Let's go to Glenn in Ohio. Glenn, welcome to the show.
Yes.
Hey, Glenn.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're on.
Okay. Right after the evacuation of people from Afghanistan, they sequestered a bunch of them out in Montana to do the vetting. And I recall, and it was reported on Breitbart, a 20 or 21-year-old woman from out there was brutalized and raped by one of these Afghanis, and he hadn't even been in the country long enough to get the dust off his sandals. This stuff has got to stop.
Well,
we have to get.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I hear your frustration, and it's incredibly sad. To your point, as part of what I mentioned, under the Biden administration, and we're talking about non-alien crimes. So from the onset of the Biden administration until the end of it, there was a 967% increase in homicides / manslaughter by non-citizens in this country. Sexual offenses specifically that you were talking to, 182% increase by non-citizens. And by the time it was all said and done, a quarter of all crime on average, a quarter of all crime in the United States of America, illegal aliens. Are 1 in 4 Americans or 1 in 4 people in this country non-citizens? Heck no, right? I mean, even with Biden's open border, we're now at the point where 1 in 4 people are non-citizens in this country, but they're responsible for a quarter of all the crime. What does that tell you about what we imported in? Now, about what Trump is doing, I do have some good news on that. I'll bring it to you next. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Sarah Beckstrom of West Virginia, one of the guardsmen that we're talking about, highly respected, young, magnificent person, started service in June of 2023, outstanding in every way. She's just passed away. The other young man is fighting for his life. He's in very bad shape. He's fighting for his life, and hopefully we'll get better news with respect to him.
Andrew Wolf, the West Virginia Guardsman President Trump is speaking about there. And Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. Caller Glenn mentioned we got to do something about this. So I gave you all the horrible stats that came out of the Biden administration, the reality that so many people have faced that we continue to deal with. I mean, obviously, the bottom line is, you know, you can't unpop the cork, right? And so we're dealing with the fallout. We can't undo all the death and destruction that happened in Israel from Hamas. We can't undo all the death and destruction in Ukraine from Russia and on and on. We can't undo the lives lost, including Sarah Beckstrom. But what we are seeing is meaningful progress. So here's what Trump has done just since January 20th. I updated everything this morning. Best information's available. Most of it was updated by the government no later than last week, some as recently as heading into Thanksgiving. So we know that attempted border crossings, with Trump having closed down the border, have been greater than 90%. Access into the United States by non-citizens down by greater than 99%. Of course, the CBP-1 home app that was used to fly Biden administration illegal immigrants in, now you have that being used to fly illegal immigrants out of the United States. So effectively no incoming. And then you take a look at ICE's daily detentions. Those are up 55% from a year ago. So no incoming, 55% increase in outgoing. And surprise, surprise, as the detentions rise, crime is falling. Homicides are down by 20% since Trump became president. 20% decline in homicides. Robberies down by 14%, as is property crime. Violent crime in general is down by 11% as well since Trump became president of the United States. Then you take a look at the deportation picture. So we now have had nearly 2.2 million deportations so far this year. Most of those, about 4-1, running self-deportations. Where does that put us? About where we were after the third year of the Biden administration. So Trump has basically done 1 year of Biden overturning illegal immigration. Be right back.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
President Trump announcing he will permanently ban migration from the third world to allow the U.S. system to fully recover. This comes after 20-year-old National Guard Specialist Sarah Beckstrom died Thursday after being shot by an Afghan national near the White House. 24-year-old Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, who was also attacked, is currently fighting for his life. The suspect is in custody after being shot by another service member.
Fox's Ashley Strohmeyer. And so President Trump has already done a lot to combat illegal aliens, to combat terrorism in this country and around the world. Today, he ended up doing a lot more. Hey there, Brian Mudd with you from my home station, WJNO in West Palm Beach. Not some underground bunker, but instead set about 7 feet above sea level in a building that once had its roof ripped off by a hurricane. Although that was the last hurricane that came through this area. Fun fact, as we wrap up another hurricane season, it has now been over 20 years since a hurricane hit southeast Florida. No kidding. A lot of other places in Florida, the Gulf Coast, for sure, a bunch. But nowhere in the United States this year. And for southeast Florida, we're now on a greater than 20-year winning streak. So no kidding, you can win a lot of trivia questions with that one. Even in South Florida, you can win a lot of trivia games with that particular question. Would love it if you would check out the Brian Mudd Show podcast wherever you get your podcast. I received a lot of requests for information that I provided during the first hour of the show about the crimes committed by illegal immigrants, something that I've regularly updated you on this show about, all throughout the Biden administration. Most recent information we have. And speaking of which, so the president is combating illegal immigration, taking action to make the country, the world, a safer place. President Trump, just to kind of circle back to where I wrapped up the first hour, so far this year has reduced the amount of illegal immigration into this country to a near non-existent number, while increasing ICE detentions and deportations by 55%. And what we've seen is that homicides have decreased by 20% this year. Robberies, property crime, 14% lower. Violent crime in general down by 11%. So we're already making a good amount of progress. And a lot of that is because when you take a look at the actual numbers of deportations that have taken place, where are we at this point as we're wrapping up November? We basically undone the last year of the Biden administration. So it's like 1 year of Joe Biden's failures taken care of, 3 more to go. So we have 3/4 of the problem effectively still going on in this country. That's why you continue to see the Islamic terror attack that we saw in Washington, D.C. and the problems that still play out in communities. But what we are seeing, fewer crimes generally, fewer problems generally. One of the most effective methods has been the self-deportation game. It's funny because I am here in South Florida, and no matter where you are in the country, you no doubt have heard about Alligator Alcatraz and all the hype about it when it went online months ago. And, oh my gosh, it's just so terrible. Which is all nonsense. It is so ridiculous. But the detention facilities, when you would have all of the godless, soulless, and slanderous news media types, all of your leftist news media outlets that go, oh my gosh, take a look at these horrible conditions. Oh my gosh, no due process. Oh my God. Oh. Those people. You would have a lot of folks on the right that would get upset. My thought was, no, let them. Let them go ahead and make this out to be as horrific as possible. Make every detention facility that is run by ICE seem like it was the original Alcatraz. Make it seem. Just go ahead and lie and say that people are outright being tortured in there. Go ahead and do it. Because that is the single most effective mechanism to help speed up deportations. The first thing is, if we have to get ICE out there and we have to detain, and then we have to put in these detention facilities, and then we have to eventually ship these people to wherever the heck they're going to go, that all costs money every single day. I would love nothing more than all these illegal aliens, all these people that never had any business being in this country in the first place, to get the hell out on their own dime rather than screwing us another dime another day. And that's what the Trump administration has been exceedingly effective at. As of today, you have had 2.2 million illegal aliens that have been deported this year. How many are formal ICE deportations? 527,000 of them. All the rest of that are people that have gone, you know what? I don't know that I want to wait around and see if Kristi Noem is right. See if Homeland Security Secretary is right, and I am the next that's going to be detained, and I am the next that's going to be deported. And it sounds like those detention facilities are really bad. I might get tortured there. I should just leave on my own. Yes, please, go. Get the hell out. And so this is the single best thing that could possibly happen that way. That's how we've gotten to the critical mass in terms of these numbers to undo about the last year of harm that the Biden administration has done at this point. Now, here's the next piece. It was the incentive structure, right? Part of the reason that the floodgates opened the way they did, and we had people from nearly 200 countries around the world pouring in, it's because of the incentive structure that's been in place. All of the government programs. In the first hour, I went through every one of the federal government programs, from affordable housing, which ended up putting Americans who needed it on the streets, to food stamps, to child tax credits, and you name it, all handed out. So you got to pay for these illegal aliens that would commit these crimes, that would take affordable housing, that would drive up the rate of inflation, all these problems. Well, President Trump, on February 19th, signed an executive order called Preserving Federal Benefits for American Citizens. And as was stated by the administration, it says the order directs federal departments and agencies to identify all federally funded programs currently providing financial benefits to illegal aliens and take corrective action. And so, as is the case with so many executive orders, you first have all the various different department heads that have to get their arms around what is going where, and then figure out the way to propose a plan to take corrective action. Well, they've now done that. As of today, there are no more of these federal benefits that were put in place by the Biden administration through various different executive actions. President Trump ended up invalidating today every single executive order that was signed by Team Autopen, which, by the way, was over 90% of them. And so, as of now and going forward, so many of these federal government benefits that were given to those and have been given to those that are awaiting the asylum process, not going to be happening anymore. Not going to be happening anymore. And what do you think that's going to do in terms of self-deportations? You know, if you're sitting there in government subsidized housing, getting food stamps, getting child tax credits, getting free education, free puppies, free candies, free Biden bucks, free Obama phones, all this crap that is not free, we pay for it. They don't. They just get it. If that stuff starts going away, think there's a good chance that they too will start going away? President Trump has started that today. Huge next move. So the executive order that he signed on February 19th is now in motion. Now in motion. The other thing he's done, another action today, he has reined in visas and the way that they are being handed out, specifically from Afghanistan for the obvious reasons, but also the realization that from just about any country, there needs to be more vetting. And so the visa process is being slowed down all around the world. You're going to have, and this is all part of what Ashley Strohmeyer was saying in the report, we're going to really reset the situation here when it comes to immigration legally through these asylum methods, these refugees. And not that there aren't legitimate refugees and asylum seekers, there are but they are few and far between, certainly not what it has become. But the problem we have seen is with the floodgates that have been opened, but also just the ramping up of seemingly harmless refugees coming in. Even if people mean well, if there's no acclimation, if you bring in millions upon millions of people that have no ties to this country, that don't have any of the American values that we have, that don't have the appreciation, that don't have the education, that don't understand that freedom isn't free, that don't really want anything other than the government goodies from you and me, what are we going to get as a country? There's no way you're going to preserve our culture. There's no way that this country is going to remain as great as it's been. There's no way we're going to be great in the future if you just have a bunch of people who come over here that want government goodies, that want handouts. And so it is really important to slow down, yes, the legal immigration process, even for those that are not necessarily abusing the process. We've had way too much happen, way too fast, for way too long. And it's time to get back to people who want to be Americans, who want to be contributors in this society. We should not take another person from outside this country who doesn't want to be a net contributor to the United States of America. We shouldn't bring in another person from anywhere in the world who doesn't want to aspire to be the next Elon Musk. We shouldn't. We need to get back to the shared values of this country. We need to get back to making sure that we teach what the civics happen to be in this country. We need to get back to a point where there is not a single person that comes in here that is a burden, a net burden to another American in this society. Nobody should come in that isn't accretive, period. And that's what President Trump has put into motion today. And so while it is a really sad day, because we're talking about a terrorist attack heading into Thanksgiving that happened in Washington, D.C., and because it is so super frustrating because of all the problems that we continue to have all around this country due to Joe Biden having been president of the United States. Today, this Black Friday, this otherwise kind of sleepy holiday day for a lot of people, and the turkey coma thing could actually be one of the more pivotal and important days in modern American history, resetting the situation in the direction it needs to be pertaining to immigration into this country. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the Great One.
Mudd Levin.
You know, in all the time I've been supporting Pure Talk, my wireless company, I can honestly say I've never seen an offer like this from them before. Listen to this. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data with a 30-gig hotspot. Just $29.95 a month for life. Friends, this is Pure Talk's top-tier plan, normally $65 a month. Now through December 7th, that's it. Just $29.95 a month. You're saving over 50% a month every month for life. Yes, that's on their crazy fast 5G network. But this offer is extremely short-lived. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's Levin for Pure Talk's best unlimited plan. Just $29.95 a month for life. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Keep your phone, keep your number, and start saving with unlimited for life for just $29.95 a month. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. See puretalk.com for details. Offer ends December 7, 2025.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the agency will issue proposed regulations clarifying that portions of income tax benefits are no longer available to illegal and other non-qualified aliens. The secretary says the programs covered include the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Additional Child Tax Credit, the American Opportunity Tax Credit, and the Savers Match Credit.
Boom. All right. Report there from Fox News. And that is a big part of what I'm talking about. Today, this Friday, no more so many of those federal benefits that were opened up to asylum seekers by the Biden administration, gonzo, which means that hopefully, given that we've had self-deportations running at a rate that have been about 4-to-1 actual deportations, hopefully we're going to accelerate that from here. You take away the government goodies. You take away the affordable housing that you're paying for. You take away the food stamps. You take away all these things that they just sit here, come in and live off of us. Well, we will fight with our families to try to get by, put food on the table for Thanksgiving. You take that stuff away from them, good chance that you're going to see a lot more self-deportations. So not only are we not paying to screw ourselves the way we have been anymore, but you're also going to accelerate likely the single most effective aspect of the Trump deportation plan, the self-deportation plan. And so, yeah, the only people that should be coming into this country, people who you might say are thankful, the spirit of Thanksgiving, they're thankful to be here, that are accretive to this country, that are going to add something to this country. No more people that are here just to suck off of the government teat. No more just taking advantage of you and me. It's the bottom line. And Trump has gone through quite a bit today to see to it that we're going to make it happen. Let's go to Sandra, who's been patiently waiting on the line in New Jersey. Sandra, welcome to the show.
I don't know why.
Sandra, do we have you? Going on. All right. Well, Sandra, thank you. Going once, going twice, and all right. So we'll go ahead and not have Sandra here. Sounds like you had an interesting conversation going on in the background. Hope it is. So a couple things as we're taking a look at what Trump is working on. What I just ended up bringing you, these big changes in government assistance programs going forward. There's something else that's in the works that could change everything when it comes to healthcare. And it's actually something that I'm really excited to talk to you about. In fact, prior to Wednesday's D.C. terror attack, I was really looking forward to sharing this with you on today's show. Trump Care has the potential to change everything. Trump Care is something that is effectively what I have been advocating my entire career. And it is something that is being written in real time by Senator Rick Scott, which I have some assurances on. So what is Trump Care exactly? I mean, you've heard ideas about it. I've got details about what it actually is, but most importantly, what it could do for you and how healthcare actually could become affordable this time. Not as in the fraudulent Obamacare Act, but in terms of you actually having control over the healthcare spending and the healthcare money, how it's used, rather than it just going to insurance companies. I'll break it all down for you next. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
You know, in all the time I've been supporting Pure Talk, my wireless company, I can honestly say I've never seen an offer like this from them before. Listen to this. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data with a 30-gig hotspot. Just $29.95 a month for life. Friends, this is Pure Talk's top-tier plan, normally $65 a month. Now through December 7th, that's it. Just $29.95 a month. You're saving over 50% a month every month for life. Yes, that's on their crazy fast 5G network. But this offer is extremely short-lived. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's Levin for Pure Talk's best unlimited plan. Just $29.95 a month for life. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Keep your phone, keep your number, and start saving with unlimited for life for just $29.95 a month. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. See puretalk.com for details. Offer ends December 7, 2025.
Mark Levin, the conscience of conservatism. Call Mark now at 877-381-3811.
He said, quote, any document signed by Sleepy Joe Biden with the auto pen, which was approximately 92% of them, is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect. He says the auto pen is not allowed to be used if approval is not specifically given by the President of the United States.
How crazy is that on many levels? So first, awesome. Trump today, again, could be one of the more effectual days in modern American history. This Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving, where a lot of people kind of in holiday mode. Not Trump. He's always working. He's always truly trying to make America great again. So he takes down all of the Team Auto Pen EOs, all those executive orders. But the more remarkable thing to me is how much of the Biden administration was Biden. This, to me, was the most fascinating aspect of this story today. 8% of the presidency. That's what we've learned. 8% of the executive actions taken by the Biden administration were actually taken by the President of the United States. 8%. Any questions? You know, I mentioned to open the show that after the collapse in Afghanistan, I realized that as low as my expectations were for the Biden administration, I was like, holy crap. That was a moment where for me it was like, holy crap, this is actually worse. It's like, no, this is actually, I had really big concerns about where we were heading in this country, but they weren't fully established. It was actually the floor that I had set had fallen through and things were worse than I realized. This is kind of like one of those moments, like whatever your thought process was, how much of the Biden administration's actions were actually Joe Biden? 8%. 8%. Just pretty remarkable as you take a look at, not really a lot of surprises there. Now, I'm going to dive into some news on Trump Care, what the president's working on, the Senate is working on, and what could end up making a huge impact for you. But first, we do have Sandra on the line now, and she wanted to weigh in on what we've been talking about the first hour and a half of the show. So let's go to Sandra in New Jersey. Welcome to the show.
Brian, I'm sorry what happened before. I don't understand, but I'm back.
All good. Happy Thanksgiving to you. All's well that ends well.
I agree with you. So I wanted, I was driving home before, very, very disillusioned about everything. First, Donald Trump trying to kill him, killing Charlie Kirk, and now this beautiful National Guard, Sarah. It's going to go on and on and on and on until we do something different. We're not. Look, you go on the radio. All of us, we listen, we talk, we share. But I think we're talking to the same people that think the way we think. It seems to me that we have to reach the people who don't agree with us, and that's what I think we need to do. Like when I listen to you, everything you say, I totally agree, and so does everybody else. We need to reach the people who don't agree with us, and we have to figure out a way to do it. What do you think, Brian? I'm really very, very disillusioned at this point.
Okay, so there are a couple of things there. First, you're right that we do have to reach people that don't agree with us. If it makes you feel any better, I get plenty of notes from people who don't agree with me, so they do exist in the audience. So that is a thing, even if you might not necessarily always hear from them. Although occasionally they will stay on the line, and we'll have them for you. But there are a couple points at first that are instructive. So one of the things that I always try to do is and it's just kind of the way I'm wired. So I'm an entrepreneur by nature, and I am a problem solver. And kind of to your point, one of my great frustrations in life, especially as someone who is a former young entrepreneur, I like to do things. I'm a doer, and I'm in a profession where I'm a talker. And so I really take seriously the need to give actionable items and to not just throw a pile of poo out there like, here's all this awful news, back to you. And to that end, there's been so much here that's instructive. And so as we walk through these really horrible things that have happened, what we have seen is that President Trump has undone about the last year's worth of damage that Biden did on the illegal immigration front. That means we've still got a long way to go. We knew that, but that's a lot of progress at this stage in the administration. We're seeing that come through in crime rates. It's horrible what continues to happen. Non-citizens that are committing the crimes they're committing, having this Islamic terrorist murder the National Guard's woman and having another that's in critical condition. These things are horrible. But it's not the end of the story. We're making that progress. President Trump today realizing that it's got to be everything I can do in this moment. To your point, what is it I can do? You and I can try to win hearts and minds, share the message, and at times offer policy solutions to some of the right people. By the way, I'm going to tell you about the whole Trump care thing, which is a byproduct of that. But when you take a look at what Trump's done today, it is substantive. It is substantive. Cutting all those illegal aliens, all these asylum seekers off of government assistance programs, that is huge. That will end up having a profound impact, not only cost savings for us, but it also should expedite more self-deportations. It also, very importantly, cuts off the incentive structure. You know, the biggest problem we've had with everybody who doesn't come here specifically to harm people, but just to take advantage of us, the incentive structure. And so you get rid of that, and suddenly not going to be as appealing for people to come, but to stay. And so these are all things that are being done to move the needle. And then you take a look at where we are heading in terms of policies like Trump care. Something that I'm excited to tell you about. Something that could change everything. So the fix has been in on healthcare since March 23rd of 2010. It happens to be the day that Barack Obama, the Big O, not to be confused with Big Mike, the other O, signed into law the ACA and all the lies that came along with it. As you well know, that law did not make healthcare affordable. It wasn't true that if you liked your existing health insurance plan, you could keep it. It wasn't true that if you liked your doctor, you'd still be able to keep seeing him or her. There were over 4 million people that were forced off of the health insurance plans they had after that was signed into law. What was true was that one of the greatest corporate welfare projects in American history, if not the largest, was set into motion. Along with it, a guarantee that there would be, less health care affordability. And that is because the Not Affordable Care Act took the greatest obstacle to affordable health care. What do you think is the single greatest obstacle to affordable health care? The answer is actually health insurance. And the greatest sin of the Not Affordable Care Act was taking the single biggest problem we have with health care in this country, which is the insurance first model, and it mandated it into law. The greatest lie that has been perpetuated ever since is health insurance equals health care. This is just, it is an infuriating thing to me. People conflate it all the time. The left has been doing it for decades now. Health insurance is not health care. Health insurance is almost always, to most people, the antithesis of health care. It's why they can't afford health care. It is absolute BS. The fact of the matter is that the average American, the average family, can't afford health care because of the ridiculously high cost of health insurance. But it's not just the ridiculously high cost of health insurance. It's also what comes along with it. And by the way, as we're talking about it's true of employee-sponsored plans. It's true of exchange-based Obamacare plans. And you take a look at why we had the 6-week partial government shutdown, the longest shutdown in American history. Why? Well, it's because Democrats claimed that we would have a health care crisis if what? COVID-era Obamacare tax credits that propped up the Unaffordable Care Act plans, if they weren't extended. We would have a health care crisis if the people who actually use exchange-based policies had to pay for them, rather than everybody else who doesn't use them. And voting no for that continuing resolution, Chuck Schumer, the piece of garbage that is the Senate Minority Leader, who's now being relegated to the dustbin of history, as he long ago should have been. He said, this healthcare crisis is so severe, so urgent, so devastating for families back home that I cannot in good faith support this. This healthcare crisis is so severe, so urgent. What is the healthcare crisis he was speaking of? It was Obamacare. It was Obamacare. Something he himself voted to create. Something he himself lied about. Something that Nancy Pelosi said we had to vote for to find out what was in it. Something that was pitched as the Affordable Care Act. It has been such a failure that unless 92% of the cost, that's what's paid for, the subsidies you hear about this thing, 92% of the cost are paid for by the people who don't actually use it. If that doesn't happen, now you got a crisis. And that's because the fix has been in since the onset of the ACA. The only winners have been the health insurance companies and those in the health care service industry that exploit the situation, and taxpayers along with it. And what needs to be fixed? I have been saying this for as long as I can remember, which professionally has been going on 28 years. The key to solving healthcare affordability challenges is consumer price transparency. Today is Black Friday. You buy stuff? I mean, and you might not even today, because Black Friday begins in November because, just become a joke. It's like, whatever. But have you bought deals during this month in the name of Black Friday or whatever? We're really good at finding deals when we're given an opportunity to shop. We're really good at that stuff. But when you have no idea what anything costs, when there is no transparency in the model, what's going to happen? It is an insane system that we have built ourselves into. Health insurance should never be any different than any other major insurance product. There should be no distance between the way we use healthcare insurance and the way we use our auto insurance, or the way that we use property insurance. None. But that there is the actual healthcare crisis. What Obamacare did was mandate that we have a crisis, which, by the way, was all part of the plan to collapse the system. So as for the extent of that, I'll begin to break it down and paint the picture of what could actually be and how we could have legitimate healthcare affordability. That's coming up. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
In all the time I've been supporting Pure Talk, my wireless company, I can honestly say I've never seen an offer like this from them before. Listen to this. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data with a 30-gig hotspot. Just $29.95 a month for life. Friends, this is Pure Talk's top-tier plan, normally $65 a month. Now through December 7th, that's it. Just $29.95 a month. You're saving over 50% a month every month for life. Yes, that's on their crazy fast 5G network. But this offer is extremely short-lived. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's Levin for Pure Talk's best unlimited plan. Just $29.95 a month for life. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Keep your phone, keep your number, and start saving with unlimited for life for just $29.95 a month. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. See puretalk.com for details. Offer ends December 7, 2025.
He also says in that post, quote, I am hereby canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden because the people who operated the auto pen did so illegally.
Fox's Dana Marie McNichol, as she has been explaining that Team AutoPen Gonzo. By the way, one of the fun things has been what President Trump did entering the Oval Office, going back to early October was when it first happened. My buddy John Decker, White House correspondent, is walking into the Oval Office, and he did this double take, and it was... and you perhaps have heard about it or seen the pictures at this point, but you have the presidents, the pictures, the portraits heading towards the Oval Office. And so you would have the three most recent as the 45th president, which was the official Trump portrait from his first administration. And then you had the 46th president of the United States. And in place of a portrait of Joe Biden is the Joe Biden auto pen. Same size as the portraits of Trump, because then, of course, his official portrait, the 47, it is right on point. And it is also an indication that Trump was getting to the bottom of Team Auto Pen, which, as we found out, was 92% of the Biden administration. 92% of the Biden administration was not Joe Biden. I mean, what does that tell you? All the Obamaites that ended up surrounding that administration. The rules for radicals, folks, the weather underground folks that Obama ended up being raised by, brought into the fold politically by, that ended up being part of his administration, and that ended up basically running the Biden administration. 92%, those people. And you wonder why we had open borders and free everything for everybody else, paid for by you. No wonder we had so much that needed to be fixed. No wonder, going back to Obama, he mandated the single biggest obstacle to affordable health care and then called it affordable health care, which is the health insurance model. And the key to solving health care affordability challenges is consumer price transparency. The biggest obstacle to such a thing is the current insurance first model. Health insurance does need to be like other insurance products. And if we actually did that, I'm going to give you a little bit of a nugget to nibble on here, because we'll dive into this at the top of the third hour. How much do you spend on actual health care in a year? Not your health insurance. How much in the average year do you spend on health care services? How much do you think you would save if you actually were able to just pay for health care services and not for health insurance? What would the implications be to you and your family if you actually had control over all of the money rather than most of it going to the health insurance company? I'll fill in those blanks next. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
The president's very much involved in these talks, and he's very focused on unveiling a health care proposal that will fix the system and will bring down costs for consumers.
Press Secretary Caroline Levin talking about Trump Care, what could be the fix for everything, something that I have been advocating for my entire career. It is on the precipice of happening. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin, and it is always an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. Do appreciate you taking time, especially thankful this Thanksgiving weekend that you are carving out a little time to spend here and you take in what's happening, because it's been anything but a slow news cycle this week. It's been anything but a slow news day today. As I was mentioning in the first couple of hours, today could actually end up being a particularly pivotal day in modern American history, with the eradication of so many, 92% of the executive actions taken by the Biden administration, among other things. When you take a look at one of the biggest issues we've had in our society for quite some time, healthcare, this is another one of them. Now, it's not being solved today, but work is continuing even today in this direction. So I asked you before the top of the hour break to think about how much it is that you spend on actual health care in a year. How much you've spent over the past year. See if you can come up with a number. Think about how much you could save if you actually just got to use the money that goes into the vacuum of the health insurance industry for health care. I'm going to break this down for you in just a moment, but I want to start with an analogy. It's the most instructive way I know to illustrate the absurdity of the system that we have put ourselves in. On this Black Friday, some folks might be still running out there to get some of the Black Friday deals that may be remaining. Imagine that you walk into a store and you have somebody who greets you when you get in the store. And they grab a card. You say, here's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. Here's what I could use. They're like, okay. And so they then, you go with them, but they take the lead and they walk you around the store and they just start putting stuff in your cart. And so you're giving them feedback, but they just fill up your cart. And then when they get done, they take you up to the cash register. And when you get up to the cash register, they go, all right, credit card, please. And you don't know what anything costs. They didn't necessarily tell you exactly everything that was in the card. I mean, kind of saw what was going in there, but I mean, do you necessarily need all that stuff? Is it really what you are looking for? And you have no idea what it actually costs, and they're not going to tell you. But when you hand over your credit card, they say, you know what? Maybe 2-3 months down the road, we'll tell you what you ended up paying for this. What would you tell that person? Aside from probably where they could go, you would tell them that they're nuts. You would tell them that they're insane. You would think that it would be bat crap crazy to ever do such a thing, right? You would have to be out of your mind, whacked out, to think that it would be acceptable to go about consuming anything in life that way. But that is what we do every single day with healthcare in this country. It is absurd. It is insane. It is bat crap crazy. And that alone is why there's a healthcare crisis. Not because we aren't subsidizing enough health insurance. That is the single biggest problem in this society when it comes to healthcare, health insurance. And so I mentioned that health insurance should be no different than any other insurance product. If you end up having a belt that breaks in your car, what do? If you are adept, mechanically inclined, you might go identify the belt you need at the auto shop store and go put it on your car. If you're like me and you're not, you go to your mechanic and they take care of it. Do you file an auto insurance policy? No. That would be stupid, right? Let's say that you're at home, and you have a door that comes off the hinge. If you're adept at these types of things, you identify what you need, the hinge that you need. You go to the home improvement store, you get it, you go and you fix it. If you're like me and you don't trust your skills in that capacity, you hire a handyman and they take care of it. Do you file a property insurance claim? Hell no, right? Why is health insurance handled any differently? Why is it that you can't go get a checkup from your doctor without first having to read a piece of paper that goes on with a bunch of legal language and says effectively, we don't know the extent of what's going to happen when you walk in here. We are not going to be able to tell you whatever it costs. And we are not going to know any time for the near term what that'll end up being. But whatever it is that happens in there and whatever it is that your insurance company doesn't pay for, you are going to. That is insane. It is the analogy I used at the onset, and it is the absurdity of an insurance-first model rather than being used for catastrophic and emergency situations. Here's the more important piece of this. When it comes to being good consumers of healthcare, when it comes to being good at finding deals, I asked the question about how much you spent on healthcare over the past year. The average American spent only $1,514 in actual healthcare needs. That is a per-person cost. So if you have a family of 4, multiply that by 4, boom, there you go. You got about $6,000 in healthcare cost that you actually spent. That was the amount of healthcare for your family over the past year. Now, the more remarkable thing is the actual cost for the average health insurance plan this year is $6,400. That is just for one person. The average cost, average health insurance plan, $6,400. Now, the best part of this is not exactly like even with paying the $6,400 for health insurance, you're getting any health care, right? Because how often is it that at $1,500 in actual health care services, you even met the deductible? Because the average plan carries a high deductible these days, right? So what actually ends up happening is that not only is the round trip on your insurance policy $6,400, but you often don't get anything for that. Nothing. And you're out of pocket the $1,500 for your actual healthcare services. And this is the devil in the details. If we had an average of $1,500 in total healthcare expenses per the average American in this country per year, that is affordable. That is absolutely affordable. That is sustainable. What isn't affordable, what isn't sustainable, is where per person you have $6,400 in expense, and then on top of it, per person, another $1,500 for actual healthcare services. So who is it that's winning here? Who is it that's getting screwed here? And so let's talk a little bit about what's being fixed. Senator Rick Scott currently authoring the Trump Care bill aimed at fixing the failures with the Affordable Care Act. It started when recently had President Trump post some truth. He said, the only health care I will support or approve is sending the money directly back to the people with nothing going to the big, fat, rich insurance companies who have made trillions and ripped off America long enough. The people will be allowed to negotiate and buy their own much better insurance. Power to the people. Congress, do not waste your time and energy on anything else. This is the only way to have great health care in America. Get it done now. And that is exactly what's being drawn up by Senator Rick Scott right now. And talking with him about his proposal, he said two things that are going to be key in truly fixing the healthcare affordability crisis. Two things that I have lobbied for, that I have pressed for, and that he has said is going to be in this legislation. The first is that it will call for money that had previously been used for ACA subsidies to instead be given in the form of health savings accounts that could then be used for healthcare services that they need. Okay, so rather than the ACA subsidies just getting paid, because right now you go on the exchange if you're doing those policies and you see, okay, here is how much will be paid for my subsidy based upon my circumstance. And so that money just goes straight from the American taxpayer schlub to the health insurance companies. No. Instead, what we'd be talking about here is that money going directly into a health savings account. Same amount of money, but the individual would have the choice. And buying health insurance with it would no longer be mandatory. That would be the second piece. Something else that was put into effect with the Not Affordable Care Act. So we would eliminate mandatory health insurance. Health savings accounts would be funded rather than health insurance companies. And then you would be able to shop for the insurance that would fit your needs with all those other mandates gone from Obamacare, paying for all the things that you never need, like, you know, some retiree that's having to pay for contraception or sex changes for somebody. All that nonsense would be out of it. You would be able to have competitive health insurance policies, people that are actively creating health insurance plans, which, by the way, do exist, where you just say, here's what I need, and they put it together for you. Where does that end up putting you? Well, it ends up putting you, if you need a comprehensive plan without all the garbage, you want to go for a really strong plan. The average savings, I've worked with a healthcare company on this, about 30%. You'll save about 30%. Just carving out the garbage you don't need for a health insurance plan. Let's say that you're young, you're healthy, you don't need a lot of stuff other than just catastrophic kind of care, emergency care. You're talking about savings of 70%. 70%. So I'm going to start putting some numbers to this, painting the picture about how profound this can actually be beyond those percents. That's coming up next. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mudd Levin.
We are upgrading the initial charges of assault to murder in the first degree. And we are hoping that the more information we can get and the more investigation that is going on 24/7 now, around the clock in Washington, the more we will find out.
U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro announcing that on Fox News earlier. Of course, the horrific murder of Guardsman Sarah Beckstrom on Wednesday. And we talked through the first half of the show about the impact of the Biden policies, the failure on immigration policy. Well, we're taking a look at healthcare policy most recently and mentioned that we have the Trump care legislation that's being written by Senator Scott. And where the legislation is first being positioned is for the ACA subsidies. And that's because that's the here and now issue as you're in the final moments of the open enrollment for Obamacare policies. And so when we take a look at what the legislation is currently being written to do, rather than sending Obamacare subsidies to the insurance company, instead, the money that would be used for that subsidy would go to the recipient in the form of a health care savings account. And then that individual will be able to use that money on actual health care. That could be in the form of an insurance plan that they choose themselves. That could be in the form of just going and paying for their health care needs. When I was talking to Senator Scott about this and the impact, there are a couple things. Just that you have 21.5 million people on Obamacare policies. So just that change with Obamacare would considerably begin to move the needle. And what would happen? Well, you would have consumer choice that would begin to cycle into the system. You would have healthcare service providers that are going to want access to that money for the people that are not looking to use health insurance for everything, that just want to go buy healthcare. So that would mean that they would have to compete for that healthcare business by making them their prices known, by trying to be forthright, by breaking away themselves from the insurance first model. It's part of the reason why urgent cares have become so popular. You know that if you go in there, it's going to cost whatever the rate is for the urgent care that you might go to. So that is the first piece, is you would bring consumer choice in on the health insurance side. You'd bring it in also on the healthcare service provider side. But Senator Scott also indicated that he believes that if we get this through for ACA subsidies, that employers are going to follow suit. And so this is where it really could begin to change everything. For the average employer-sponsored plan, the average employer right now is paying $7,800 towards an employee's health insurance plan. If you have a family plan, that's over $20,000, independent of what you're paying towards it. Think about what that might mean in a healthcare savings account for you. Be right back. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.
Mark Levin, the George S. Patton of Talk Radio. Call him at 877-381-3811. That's 877-381-3811.
We are upgrading the initial charges of assault to murder in the first degree. And we are hoping that the more information we can get and the more investigation that is going on 24/7 now, around the clock in Washington, the more we will find out.
Yeah, so again, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro there talking about the Biden failures that we discussed earlier in the show. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin. Always a pleasure to be here with you, broadcasting from beautiful South Florida, not far from the President of the United States. Would love it if you checked out my podcast, the Brian Mudd Show podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Also socially at Brian Mudd Radio. By the way, speaking of checking things out, Life, Liberty, and Levin. Okay, so you got me, not the great one tonight, but you got the great one tomorrow and Sunday night as well. 8 Eastern, Fox News Channel. The great one always there for you. So go ahead and hit that up on your DVR as well. That way, just in case you miss it live, you can go ahead and catch it. And sometimes even if you catch it live, you're like, I want to go back and watch it again. And so, Life, Liberty, and Levin, Saturday and Sunday, 8 Eastern on Fox. Now, talking about healthcare affordability, talking about the Trump Care fix. Mentioned that where we are with the legislation right now is that for Obamacare subsidies, rather than that money going to the health insurance companies, going to the health savings accounts for people that would otherwise receive the subsidies, so they could start becoming good consumers of healthcare. And that Senator Rick Scott, who's authoring this legislation, believes that you would then begin to have employers that would follow suit if the government takes the lead with the ACA policy. So what would that mean? In 2025, the average employer-sponsored plan, the employer is paying nearly $7,800 towards an employee's health insurance plan. That is a total that jumps to over $20,100 for the average family plan. Now, I want you to noodle on this for a moment. Imagine if rather than $7,800 to $20,000 plus dollars being paid directly to insurance companies, that money were to flow to your health savings account instead. What would that mean to you? And by the way, that's in addition to what you already contribute to your plan. So, for example, for the average employer-sponsored plan, the average employee this year is paying $1,527 towards it. If you have a family plan, that jumps up to about $6,850 that you are paying towards that plan. So now you start taking a look at those numbers, and I mean, you're around, $9,300 for an individual. You're around $27,000 for a family plan in a health savings account where you get to choose. Do I want health insurance? And if I do, can I actually just choose what I need? Like, for example, if I have a catastrophic situation, if I have an emergency, I have that care. Otherwise, I go ahead and I pay for my health service needs out of my health care savings account. How would that change things for you? And then start thinking about how far this money would go. Because as I mentioned earlier, what is the actual health care expense? How much did the average American actually spend on health care needs over the past year? $1,514. And now you suddenly have all that money in your health savings account. You begin to see how this whole thing comes together and would change everything. Where your health care service providers would have to become forthright. They would have to compete for the business rather than just hiding behind the health insurance company. And by the way, for the honest operators, the honest health service companies that aren't trying to just see whatever they can jack an insurance claim around for, see how much they could get out of it, think about how much money they would save and how much could fall to the bottom line there. I mean, you have whole departments at a lot of the healthcare service providers that are just there trying to wade through the absolute disaster that is processing insurance claims and the nonsense that goes along with people that are trying to understand what actually happened there, then trying to get a health insurance company to pay for whatever in theory happened there, and then trying to come up with an amount in the end that you're supposed to then pay for that often is wrong. That goes away. That would go away. Those whole departments not really be necessary anymore. Be a lot easier if all you're dealing with are catastrophic claims. Where if we use health insurance the same way we did every other insurance product, where you are a consumer of your healthcare needs, unless you have something that's really big that's going on, the savings would be profound. I mentioned that the savings would be for the health insurance policies. If you went ahead and just purchased health insurance policy that would be really aggressive, that would be like your full Monty insurance policy. If you only bought the stuff that you needed for the average person, you would save 30% over what's being paid right now. And if you ended up going with less coverage and you were healthier in that time, you'd be able to save about 60%. Well, that jumps all the way to over 70% savings in healthcare by the time you factor in out-of-pocket expenses paid for by you, consumer price transparency, choice, price competitiveness for healthcare services, all the things that don't exist. Imagine saving over 70% on healthcare over what we've been paying as a country. That is the true solution, something that I have always been waiting for. Let's go to Lee. Lee is in Vegas. Lee, happy Thanksgiving. How you doing?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
And happy Thanksgiving to you and the family. And you're doing a phenomenal job for the great one.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
My question is in regard to the healthcare Ponzi scheme that's being run here in the United States. You said the average family spends about $1,500 per person or whatever, but their premiums are exorbitant, and that's why insurance companies are so far ahead of us. And they also control what they're going to pay as far as eligible coverage, so they can control that. So that's why they're making tremendous amounts of money. I think paying out of pocket would be the smart choice. However, it's also like Social Security, where we're paying into it less people. Well, people are living longer, but if the government kept their hands out of the Social Security fund, we would be way ahead like the insurance companies are, right?
It's entirely true. You make a really instructive point in this as it applies to whether you're talking about Social Security. I mean, you can get into Medicare as we're talking about health care in this regard as well. You've continued to expand the situation with Social Security to where you have people, the disability abuse that takes place with it. If you actually had an account, the single greatest fraud that takes place within Social Security is the idea that it was a trust fund, right? There is no such thing as a Social Security trust fund. If there was, to your point, you'd get a benefit from it. You know, part of the reason why the insurance business historically has been such a great business, it's the reason that Warren Buffett built Berkshire Hathaway around insurance companies, is that, man, when you get to take other people's money and then invest that and get the benefit of that money, that's a pretty sweet arrangement. And so when you're talking about Social Security, the average rate of return, for example, the S&P 500, if you're just talking about stocks, is 10.1% per year. Now, you could take a look at what you pay into Social Security, what your employer pays into Social Security over the course of your life, and then do that at a 10.1% compounded interest rate and see what you end up with in the end. Which, by the way, you know, a lot of people will try to badmouth 401ks and everything else. The only people who do that are people who don't understand economics. You know, if you are responsible in managing a 401k, it is a tremendous instrument to build wealth if you invest well, especially if you have an employer match. I digress. But if you had an actual account with your money in it, that would be one thing. Not that I necessarily think the government should have that and manage it anyway. But of course, that's not what it is. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's been the ultimate Ponzi scheme. And so Social Security is money in, money out. And to date, it's been the situation to where there's been a surplus of money that has come in to the Social Security fund relative to what has been going out. And the reason why we have projected insolvency for Social Security and also for Medicare within the next decade is that the numbers begin to go the other way. You have more people that are living longer, as you said, that are going to be claiming, and then you don't have as many people in the workforce, and suddenly the numbers don't work anymore, and the Ponzi scheme comes up. If Social Security were not run by the federal government, it would be declared the greatest scam in the history of the United States of America that's ever been perpetuated. The idea of what Charles Ponzi did himself, the idea of what Madoff did, would be nothing on the scale of what the federal government has done by telling you that you have all these resources that are there for you, when in reality they don't exist at all, and it's just money that is there as an IOU. And so you're right on all these fronts, and I appreciate the call. The Social Security situation's for another day. The situation with healthcare is something we actually can fix today. Let's go to Mike, who's also been standing by. Mike in Michigan. Appreciate you hanging on the line. Welcome to the show. Hey, Mike.
Good afternoon.
Yes, how you doing, sir?
Good evening, Mr. Mudd. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
And God bless you and Mr. Levin and all those that speak on behalf of all of us conservatives on behalf of our republic.
And God bless you and everybody being there for us so we can do this. It's appreciated.
And I tell you what, all those men and women in uniforms who make us free and keep us free, and our hearts go out to them every day for our freedoms. And but with yesterday being Thanksgiving and just trying to have general conversation on behalf of what's going on in our country, and I'm an old guy, and I've always wanted to ask you this: any relationship to Roger Mudd?
You got it. So, it's actually kind of a funny thing. So Roger is, and this was a subject of conversation over Thanksgiving dinner yesterday. It does typically come up when we have mixed company. We had a mix of family and friends for Thanksgiving. And so, on the note of ancestry, a lot of people do automatically associate the connection with Roger because of the broadcast piece. And I'll say that Roger was an influence. And personally, I thought his best work was near the end of his career at the History Channel. I love the History Channel. He's there at the founding. And back when they did especially good work. By the way, every now and then I've seen that history's kind of getting back away from the, we're trying to do the reality television ridiculous thing. They actually put out some great work again. But so Roger is a distant relative. There are kind of a couple of different lanes in the Mudd family, and that's one of the lanes. The other lane is Samuel Mudd. And so if you know your history, you will certainly appreciate this aspect. So Dr. Samuel Mudd is 4 greats and uncle. And so that's my direct ancestry. And so Samuel Mudd, the doctor who set Booth's leg after he assassinated Lincoln. And so more attached to infamy than to the fame of Roger that way. Although, again, that is part of the family, just more distantly. But,
gotcha.
So
I've always wanted to ask you that question ever since I've listened to you. Even here from Michigan, I call it the Islamic State of Michigan. We have a lot of stuff going on up here. And you're down there in sunny Florida.
Yeah, it keeps me sane. But God bless you. Going after run here, Mike. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. By the way, I want to pick up on something else you said about troops and everything else. One of the things that I think was really important with regard to what we saw go down in the terror attack on those 2 guardsmen on Wednesday. It's a reminder of every single day what's put on the line for those who serve this country. And it's something we should all be thankful for and appreciate, not just around Thanksgiving, but every single day. And for that goes for those in law enforcement as well, because the people who put on the badge, they leave their families to go to work every day, never knowing what the heck might happen next. None of us are promised tomorrow, especially those that put themselves on the front lines. And so it's a really good point. Thank you. May God bless you and everybody in this audience and everybody who gives us a chance and all those who serve that keep this country free. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mudd Levin.
We shouldn't let the American people hold the bag on a really bad law. And the law was the Affordable Care Act, which turns out to be the Unaffordable Care Act.
Ding, 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 ding. And that's all we've been doing is holding the bag. And that's all we've been doing is holding the bag with insurance companies, period. Because the current insurance first model is bad crap, crazy, nuts. We would never consume anything else the way that we go about consuming healthcare. And it's only because we've been conditioned to do it. And so we need to break the back of the insurance first model. That was Congressman Carlos Jimenez, by the way. That comment on Fox and Friends this morning. The other thing we need to do is empower you. Empower you and me. One of the things I mentioned that had involved conversations with Senator Rick Scott, who's drafting the Trump Care legislation. And so I've known Rick for a long time. Of course, he's the former governor of Florida, my home state. And I've known him since he first was campaigning for governor back during the 2010 cycle. And I've known a couple things about him. He's a straight shooter. He's a man of his word. And he's realistic. So I asked him, how realistic is it that what you're working on here will get passed? Because it's all nice to draft some warm and fluffy legislation that ends up going nowhere. He said he's extremely optimistic. Extremely optimistic. And here's where it makes perfect sense. Ordinarily, you would think, Trump care? Just the name alone, the TDS-riddled left would run the other way. Okay, well, maybe you don't call it Trump care by way of the actual legislation itself. Whatever you want to call it. What we're talking about ending the insurance first model, putting all this money into healthcare savings accounts. I have a saying that good policy is also good politics. Good policy is good politics. Let's say that Donald Trump went to the American people. Let's say your member of Congress went to you and said, would you rather that we have all this money that goes into your healthcare savings account so that you get to use it the way you want to, or we just keep doing what we've been doing and send it all to the insurance companies? What are you going to choose? And that's why I don't necessarily think this is going to lose. It's been a pleasure being with you. God bless. Brian Led in for the great one, Mark Levin.